Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie Wolves is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
In the ruins of Babylon, Indiana Jones stares into a portal to heaven, pried open by the Infernal Machine. But this portal does not actually lead to heaven at all, but another dimension of some kind. And the god of this dimension stares back at the mortal realm, ancient and vengeful. Welcome to the Indiana Jones Lorecast, where we delve into the lore and the history of the Indiana Jones franchise. Hello everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, we break through to another medium in the franchise, as we are discussing for the first time one of the games. Today we will be covering Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. This game was published by LucasArts, obviously, and was released on the PC back in 1999, but it was later ported to the N64 and Game Boy Color. And it is a very interesting one because this was the first kind of major 3D game. Games in the franchise before this were in 2D. So this game very much is in the same style of the old Tomb Raider games, if you've ever played those. But a very interesting experience altogether, so without any further delay, let us begin the story. The story begins with some newspaper headlines being shown. It's the first thing we see when the game starts. It shows that the Axis powers of World War II have surrendered, and another one showing the atomic bombs being dropped. So this is clearly after the Second World War. This story takes place in 1947, and we find Indiana Jones down in a canyon somewhere in the American Southwest. He's at a dig site. After climbing down the canyon, Indy is disappointed to find nothing of great value, only potsherds, which are those little broken pieces of ceramic material found at archaeological sites, thousands of them. It is then that a helicopter comes flying overhead and lands nearby. Indy climbs up to the landing site and a woman exits the helicopter to speak with him. This woman is Sophia Hapgood, so that's great, we have a returning character. For those of you who've listened to my episodes on the fate of Atlantis, you'll be quite familiar with the character already. She tells Indy that an Iron Curtain is falling on Europe and that the Russians are taking over. She also explains that during the war she had joined the OSS, which President Truman is now calling the Central Intelligence Agency. So Sophia Hapgood is now working for the CIA. While whole battalions are working on things like Soviet sabotage and atomic secrets, her job within the CIA is to worry about, as she says, more unusual activity. She shows Indy a photograph of a Soviet dig site on the Euphrates River, or near it, south of Baghdad. They have found the ruins of Babylon. According to the Bible, this was an ancient city where mortals erected the Tower of Babel in order to reach and communicate with heaven. Looking at the photograph, Indy remarks how it looks similar to Itimanonki, which is a ziggurat in Iraq as well. The Soviet dig site is being run by a physicist named Gennady Volodnikov. This man studies manifolds and hyperspace and thinks that there might be some truth to the biblical legend of the Tower of Babel. Nothing is known of his purpose at Babylon other than the fact that he thinks atomic bombs are a joke, as Sophia says. And Indy replies by saying, "Then why isn't the world laughing?" Pretty cool line there. The two of them theorize that there may be some strange new weapon or force down there, more powerful than nuclear fission. This is probably ringing a bell, as Sophia and Indy both have experience with this very same thing, as this was the same reason the Nazis had interest in finding Atlantis. But the Babylonians tore the tower down, according to the stories, for reasons that aren't discussed in the good book. Sophia then takes out a small device and shows it to Indy. It is a small wheel kind of cog device with gears, what looks to be gears. And looking at this thing, he says that there must be some mistake, as this machine pod looks like it came from the last century, some part of a locomotive, but she tells him that there is no mistake. This thing that he's holding did come from the dig site, and it has been dated to be around 2,600 years old. Very intriguing. Sophia and the CIA are asking Indy to take this assignment, find whatever the Soviets are looking for, and Indy turns down the offer and Sophia goes home. And that is all for this episode. I can't believe it. I thought that the potsherds were a strange choice for the artifact of the story, but hey, they can't all be winners. So thank you all for listening, and I will see you next time. No, of course he takes the job. That was a joke. He then heads to Babylon. Of course, the game's loading screen makes use of the map with the red line scenes, so that's very cool. And once there, Indy sneaks into the site and climbs onto the roof of a communications building of some kind, and overhears a conversation between a radio operator and Dr. Volodnikov, who is a short and overweight man, and he has a bald head and round little glasses. A message is being relayed to Volodnikov, a warning, reminding him that socialist theory disavows the existence of supernatural powers. This message is obviously being relayed to him by the radio operator, and hearing the message, Volodnikov replies with frustration. He paces back and forth, asking if they think that he's out there searching for God. And the operator says, I'm just decoding the message, sir. Volodnikov continues pacing back and forth as he explains that he is searching for Marduk, a creature that the Babylonians worshipped as a god, but he does not live in heaven, just on another plane. And the radio operator then asks, what kind of plane, sir, Soviet or American? And Volodnikov turns to him, and of course, it's like, not an airplane, you idiot. Another dimension of reality. The Ethereum is what he's calling it. He says that the room with the tablets shall reveal the full story, and that they are so close to figuring out what they need to figure out, and he's not concerned with what is being said about his work. He then walks out of the room. Indy makes his way deeper into the site, having to take out a few guards. He is then caught by one of the guards, who has him at gunpoint, but before he can be killed, the guard is killed himself by a man named Simon Turner from the CIA. He is Sophia's boss. He was the one who got the cogwheel device thing out of the site, and he tells Indy that they got him on the job because, well, as he says, you're a famous archaeologist, I'm just a spy. He continues deeper and finds the tablet room that was mentioned before. He has to assemble some tablet pieces and is then able to read the message on it. It is from the King of Babylon, one of them anyway, the one concerned with the story of the Tower of Babel and this great machine that everyone is so excited about. It tells the story about how he built the great engine with the influence of Marduk. This work was destroyed by others, thrown down by the rabble, as it says. But 4 trusted disciples were scattered across the face of the earth, and each took with them a relic, a piece of the machine. These are clearly pieces of the great engine which are crucial to its function. These are what Indy must recover. And a map on a nearby wall appears, along with a clue on the tablets that state, where these 4 disciples went to, in riddles, of course, because of course it is. Between these clues, he figures out that the first of these 4 disciples, Ergon was his name, fled to the Tian Shan mountain range in Kazakhstan. Indy leaves the dig site and meets with Simon Turner again, where he relays all of this information. Turner says that the Tian Shan mountain range is in Soviet territory, so Indy just says that, well, he won't be showing the border guards his passport. Then we get to the Kazakhstan level, where Indy parachutes in from a plane and traverses the snowy environment, hiding under bridges as Soviet trucks pass over them, just sneaking around. He then fights his way through a border post and makes his way down a river with an inflatable raft, and he arrives at the Shambhala sanctuary. Once inside, he finds the monastery empty. An old woman appears and asks for his help. He finds and returns a small flower to her, and when she holds it, it seems to de-age her and grant her strength, as she, and now as a young woman, hurls this huge bar off of the door, allowing Indy to continue through these large wooden doors. So, that's strange. She then opens the way to the sanctuary, the inner sanctuary, for him. And Indy goes inside, and now finds himself in an icy ruin. And upon entering, a huge humanoid ice creature drops down from the ceiling and begins attacking Indy. And what does he have to say about this? Just, well, what do we have here? Like, sure, okay, that's normal, but I'll actually play you the audio from this scene, because along with the remark that he makes, I'd also like you to hear the sound that this thing makes. Here, have a listen.
What have we here?
Quite haunting. This Ice Guardian is the boss fight for this level. Indy eventually finds the piece of the Infernal Machine, a rod of some kind. He uses it to emit a sound frequency, as this is its purpose, which causes the Ice Guardian to shriek and shatter. Upon exiting the large chamber, Indy meets the woman from earlier. She tells him that though Ergon dwelt there in Shambhala, his companion, another disciple from Babylon, journeyed to some tropical island called Palawan. She then opens a path for him to follow, and sees him off. And when his back is turned and he's walking away down this path, this woman disappears into thin air. So, also very strange, but I will be offering my thoughts on this kind of crazy stuff that happens in the story at the end of the episode, as I don't want to constantly be rehashing it, because believe you me, this is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the crazy stuff in the Infernal Machine, but no pun intended with the ice monster. But anyway, he now has his next destination. Palawan is an interesting level. It is a volcanic island with an ancient-looking entrance to a ruin of some kind, which Indy has to find a way into. And side note here, there is what looks to be an old Japanese fighter plane sitting at the bottom of a lagoon, which is a pretty cool addition. In this level, there are also sharks in the water, and though you can shoot enemies if you have to, there are certain parts where Indy ends up having to fight these sharks underwater with a machete, which is definitely something that you can put on your CV. Now, on the topic of sharks and machetes, if you follow the show's social media pages or on the Discord for the show, you would have seen that I put out a bit of a hypothetical. I was conducting a very serious study where I asked people that if they were in water with a machete and they had to battle a shark, who's coming out on top? Like, what are their chances of victory here? And unsurprisingly, very many people said the shark. I also bothered some people that I know personally about this. And yeah, many people agree that the shark is most likely to win. Not unreasonable. But a lot said that if the goal wasn't to kill the shark, but just to get it to leave you alone, which is reasonable, as at the end of the day, you just need it to leave you alone and to get past it. In Indy's case, he just needs to get past the thing in order to continue deeper into the ruins. So if that was the case, I think your chances are actually quite good. You might be able to get it to leave you alone if you're fast enough. But another facet of the hypothetical was people asking, well, what if it's on land? And that's an interesting point. If the shark has leapt onto the beach or wherever on dry land to try and get you, a lot of people reckon that they could take the shark, if that was the case, even with it flopping around and trying to bite them. So, I mean, it definitely got people's brains working, and thank you very much to everybody who provided the necessary data for this study, as you have contributed towards a true milestone in science. Anyway, moving on. After a whole lot of platforming over and around lava pools, which are inside the islands, mountains, and kind of volcanic environment in and around the ruins, Indy meets Sophia deep inside the ruin, and she says that she senses danger, but not from the Russians, from something else, something strange, as she says. Now, this is of course a callback to her psychic abilities in the Fate of Atlantis, given to her by the amulet or necklace that she wore, which was an Atlantean artifact, and she seemed to have some sort of residual psychic energy left after she was separated from this necklace of hers. So that seems to still be in effect, but clearly not very accurate. She says that she senses danger, but not from Russians, from something else, and then she is immediately captured by the Russians after saying that. So I guess her strange feeling should have prioritized them first. It may need some tuning. But anyway, Indy fights through the soldiers that took her and eventually rescues her. And she helps him through some puzzles and platforming sections in the level, and he continues on by himself. The boss of this level is a giant creature made of lava, who emerges from a huge lava pit. Indy avoids this creature and eventually finds the second part of the Infernal Machine. This piece, which also seems to be a strange rod, all four pieces are different kinds of rod things that can be held. And this one turns him invisible. I know. Cool game mechanic, but my gosh. Indy is able to slip past the lava creature using the part that he just found, and exits the caves to find Sophia and Simon Turner. But he is ambushed by the Russians and has to escape in a jeep. And you are actually able to drive the jeep. It's like a little driving level where you traverse this sort of mountain jungle pass, which is cool. You do a whole lot of insane ramps that most stunt drivers would probably only dream of. And also something cool about the game that I haven't touched on yet is that every time you do something cool or noteworthy, like swing on your whip, the Indy theme plays for a second. And here especially, with every ramp you do, it plays. So it's pretty funny and really cool. As Indy approaches a cliff in the jeep, Sophia lowers a helicopter above it with the ladder down. So Indy gets up from the driver's seat and leaps from the jeep and catches the ladder as the jeep goes over the edge of a cliff. Crazy vehicle action, and especially jumping from vehicle to vehicle is another staple of the franchise, so that was cool to see. Once Indy climbs into the helicopter, Sophia tells him that she was eavesdropping on the Russians, and that she has the info on the next piece. The piece, belonging to the third disciple, is in the Pyramid of the Sun, in Teotihuacan, Mexico. We then cut straight to the next destination, like no messing around, we're just there, as Indy slides straight into the next temple. Puzzles and platforming ensue, and Indy then ends up finding an ancient valley that hasn't been inhabited in ages. He finds and enters the pyramid, and inside this pyramid is the next boss, a giant serpent. Yes, can you believe it? Another giant serpent. This serpent is called Quetzalcoatl, which is interesting, because Quetzalcoatl is an Aztec god, associated with knowledge and learning and a bunch of other stuff. This god is depicted as a serpent as well. So, what is happening in this case is similar to the situation with Marduk, in my opinion. that this being may have been worshipped as a god at some point, similar to Marduk. Doesn't really matter though to Indy, because as far as he's concerned, he has to deal with a very large animal which is trying to kill him. So when he finds his way to the third piece, he finds that when he stands beneath a certain type of crystal in the pyramid, he levitates. The device pulls him up. So he is essentially able to use these crystals overhead as an elevator. He uses this to evade the giant serpent. Indy makes use of old spike traps at this point that are in the temple by luring the serpent onto them and then activating them. And this is how he ends up killing it. He actually is able to kill this thing. He leaves the pyramid, but is then snatched up by a booby trap and is hanging upside down from a tree. The Russians now have him. But before we find out what he does next, we are gonna hop over to the mid-break quickly. I will see you there.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Behind every perfect stay at Hilton, there's a person doing that little bit extra. So Hilton does a little bit extra for that person. Named the #1 place to work in the world by Great Place to Work and Fortune magazine, Hilton has created a supportive, inclusive culture that values progression. So as your interests and skills change, there are thousands of locations to choose and roles that can grow with you. Hilton, every job makes the stay. Apply to the world's #1 workplace today at jobs.hilton.com.
Achieve clean, healthy-looking skin with Youth to the People. The 20-time award-winning superfood cleanser gently deep cleanses and removes makeup and SPF in 30 seconds. For skin that's hydrated, balanced, and soothed, never stripped. It's the green juice cleanse for your face, formulated with good-for-you antioxidants like kale, spinach, and multivitamins to respect your barrier. No disruption. Find out why one cleanser is sold every minute in the U.S. Shop now at Sephora.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Why, hello there, and welcome to the mid-show break. Just a little segment for me to discuss some stuff that you might want to know about, things about the show itself. There isn't much to say on this week's mid-break, other than if you're enjoying the show and would like to let me know, you can leave a rating or review wherever you listen. That helps a ton. And if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, along with a typed review with it, I will be reading it out on a future episode. Also, if you'd like to contact me or get a hold of me for any questions or thoughts you have, the show's email, along with other relevant links, can be found in the episode's description. So, with all that being said, let us return to our story.
I'm going after that truck. How? I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
So Indy is now on this Russian freighter, and he is locked in a cabin, held prisoner. He tricks the guard by hiding in the vent, and then when the guard investigates the seemingly empty room, Indy slips out behind him and locks him inside the cabin. Quite a comical solution to his problem there. He traverses the ship, getting his items back and recovering the 3 pieces that he's gotten so far. There are also spots where you can scribble things on the walls in chalk, just for no reason. Things like a telegraph in the cell or writing, Indy was here. Just love the humor there, that's really cool. He makes it to the deck of the ship and lowers a small speedboat into the water. Using this, he heads for the African coast, and from there he travels to Sudan. He arrives at his next destination, the funeral pyramids of the Nubian kings, standing tall amongst the sand dunes. Volodnikov seemed to think that one of these kings came from Babylon, his final disciple. Indy travels between the pyramids by jeep again, trying to find a way to enter King Solomon's mines. Once he discovers how to enter the mines, he rides a minecart through these mines and eventually comes to the tomb of the 4th disciple. Inside the tomb, Indy finds a lot of machinery, pieces of technology that are again too advanced for their time, seemingly. When he finds the fourth and final piece, he finds that it is a battery of some kind, the power source of the Infernal Machine, it seems. And its guardian is a large robot. It is brass in color, and there are heavy metallic crash sounds as it walks along the temple floor. It is quite an interesting boss fight. Indy is able to use the fourth piece to cause power surges in certain spots and defeat the robot. As he reaches the exit to the tomb, Sophia arrives to greet him. Turner is with her. They request the parts, but Indy doesn't trust Turner very much. Volodnikov then shows up as well, behind Indy, and he says to give the parts to him instead. Indy chooses Sophia and Turner, and they take the parts and leave. And so Indy and Volodnikov talk for a moment. There's this very kind of strange, passive behavior between them, considering that Volodnikov, up until this point, has kind of been, the main antagonist of the story, but he doesn't seem to be too interested in trying to kill Indy himself. So as they sit and have this really awkward and strange discussion, he explains that reactivating the machine will cost Sophia and Turner their lives. He explains that Marduk crossed the veil between worlds to inspire the Babylonian priests to build the Infernal Machine. But since it was destroyed, Marduk, potent and terrible, has been waiting for his chance to enact revenge upon mankind for destroying his machine. Hearing this, Indy takes off running after Sophia, leaving Volodnikov standing and laughing to himself. We cut to Indy returning to Babylon to find the entrance to the Infernal Machine open. Inside, it certainly does look like a machine. The walls, the floor, everything has this texture of ancient machinery, very unique looking level. He enters a large chamber where the gateway to the Ethereum opens. Turner activates it and the portal lights up beneath them. The portal is far below them on the floor of this tall chamber. Above it hovers what seems to be some sort of cage. This thing looks like a giant floating D20 that's glowing, like the tabletop dice. That's the shape that it is. Turner says that they need to establish contact with the other side and secure their cooperation with America. So go talk to the little interdimensional creatures and get them on America's side. That's his plan. They'll need an ambassador to enter the gateway, as Turner says. Sophia is hesitant and says that she doesn't want to be this ambassador, but Turner is not having that, and he pushes her in. And she falls into this floating D20, and she is suspended in mid-air, floating in this floating cage right above the portal. Turner then tells Indy that he needs his help to activate the machine, as he thinks that he's done something wrong. He then takes one of the 4 pieces and becomes invisible. This leaves Indy to travel around the machine, switching the places of the other 3 pieces, as Turner had indeed placed them in the wrong spots. Turner shows up again, and him and Indy have a back and forth, and Turner decides that Indy needs to die. So we now have a gunfight where Turner is able to disappear and reappear constantly. A very interesting 1v1, but this is one which Indy wins. He's able to kill Turner and take the final part and install it. And he activates the machine, not knowing what will happen. He's trying to free Sophia, but unfortunately this activation causes the floating cage with Sophia inside to plummet down into the open gateway. Indy, almost falling from the rumbling caused by the machine's activation, hangs from the ledge, looking down into the portal, and he then decides to go in after her to save her. So we now have the final level of the main story, the Ethereum. Indy plummets down into this strange new reality. The whole atmosphere seems to be made up of blue electric waves, pulsing up and down continually, and this whole realm seems to be made of one big machine. And there is machinery and metal surfaces everywhere, all very alien looking. Indy begins exploring to try and find a way to free Sophia. Eventually, in a large chamber, a circular door opens on the floor, and Marduk himself emerges from it. Now, I have to take a second here to praise the design of Marduk in this game. I will be posting pictures of his design on the social media pages for the show and on the Discord, so you can go check those out. Let me know what your thoughts on it are. But to briefly describe it, he looks like a ghostly, flying skeletal being with bug wings. He looks quite buggish. A very interesting character design. All of the creatures in this game have cool designs, but I like his very much. Indy has to use a strange mechanic of traveling back to places that he's already been in the game in order to get different items to help fight Marduk. It is a long process of jumping back to each level from the game that you've already played, and then coming back to progress further in the Ethereum boss fight. Indy's whip towards the end also gets electrically charged with the, I guess, magical Ethereum energy. I won't complain though, a super magic whip sounds and looks very cool. So in the final stages of the battle, Marduk merges with Sophia, becoming a whole new entity, which looks like Marduk but with some golden additions to the body and with Sophia's face, vaguely. Very unsettling and weird. Even weirder is the fact that this character is called Mofia. It just sounds so funny. Mofia, like I couldn't take that seriously when I saw it. So, after enough portals to Earth had been opened and Mofia was weakened enough, Indy attacks Mofia with his electrified whip and destroys Marduk, freeing Sophia in the process and freeing me from having to continually say Mofia and struggle to keep my laughter in. Indy helps Sophia to her feet and confronts her about the fact that she was on Turner's side right up until the end, when she ended up in the cage. And she says that she never lied to him throughout this whole thing. She was a professional and she was doing her job, and Indy is able to forgive her as the two of them embrace, but then decide to cut it short as the Ethereum is beginning to collapse. They begin running. Once they cross the threshold into Babylon, the gateway to Ethereum closes behind them, causing an earthquake which destroys the Infernal Machine. When they reach the surface, Volodnikov shows up, not with soldiers or anything, just him. He asks if they found God, and Indy says that he hopes not, as whoever they ran into down there wasn't very forgiving. Volodnikov says that that's a relief, as socialist theory disavows the existence of supernatural powers, as you know. Sophia asks him, "And you expect to win the Cold War?" And Volodnikov says, "I expect a long struggle," as he holds out his hand to help Sophia and then Indy out of the shallow hole that they were standing in. Indy asks him if he has any socialist vodka on hand because he's thirsty. And the three of them then literally walk off from the destroyed ruins into the sunset, and we are then given the title screen. So yes, in a surprising turn of events, Volodnikov seemed to realize the error of his ways and decides to be friendly towards Indy and Sophia. It's pretty wholesome. One more thing about this game before I give my closing thoughts on all of it is that there is actually a bonus level where you go to the same temple in Peru that is seen in the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here you find new areas of the temple which Indy did not find in the film, and you find a second little golden idol, and you then get to run away from a boulder, like the film, classic boulder chase trap. And so that is a really cool idea for a little bonus level. A fun little bunch of Easter eggs and references. So that is Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. I thought it was fun. A lot of wacky, insane, magical things going on. And when it comes to that subject, there are a lot of people who only consider the films and the Young Indiana Jones TV series to be canon. The rest is not. As the comics and games, for instance, have some of the supernatural stuff that's on a completely different level to the films. So it makes sense to think that. But to me, this might sound infuriating, but I don't really give it much thought. As I said in a previous episode, I think this franchise can be best enjoyed by treating it like the fun serial adventure that it is. Something you'd watch every Saturday morning. One week it's ancient temples, the next week giant serpent, Sasquatch, Nazis, aliens, dragons, gods. It's just one insane thing to the next, like it's nothing at all. And I have to admire that. That's what it is to me. It's just a fun time. If you disagree, that's alright. I understand different people would have preferred it to stick to the slightly more grounded and nuanced approach to the supernatural as seen in the first 3 films. Different strokes for different folks, I suppose. Feel free to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on all that. I would love to hear your opinions on that subject. But thank you all so much for listening to the end. If you have any questions, you can find me in my office. But until then, remember, if a whole civilization thought it necessary to block their god on Twitter, it was probably for a good reason. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Indiana Jones Lorecast. If you like what you hear and want to support the show, then drop a rating or review wherever you're listening. I'll see you next time.